Hey guys, I'm back, and here we are, Darren Basavaraj, on another episode of Darren Knows Everything About AP Government, Mr. Fagan. So, I got a lot of comments couple days ago, just telling me about how, Darren, you haven't gone over the Judiciary Act of 1789. What's that? So, I'm just here to tell you exactly what it is, why it's important, things of that nature. So, let me get straight into that. The Judiciary Act of 1789, officially titled An Act to Establish the Judicial Courts of the United States, was signed into law by President George Washington on September 24th, 1789. Pretty old law. Article 3 of the Constitution established a Supreme Court, right? But left to Congress the authority to create lower federal courts as needed. So basically, they put in that little, they basically said, I don't really know what's going on here, so I'm gonna leave it up to somebody who knows. And it was really authored by Senator Oliver Ellsworth of Connecticut and William Patterson of New Jersey. This act, it really established the structure and jurisdiction of the federal court system, created the position of Attorney General. Although amended throughout the years by Congress, the basic outline of the federal court system established by the first Congress remains largely intact today. Now, what does that mean? That means that this act, it affects us today. It's still up and alive. It's alive. It's alive. And you're probably saying what did this act even do? You're telling me it established the federal court system. What does that even mean? Well, that's why I'm here, guys. That's why I'm here. I know what you're going to ask before you even ask it. Okay, so I'm just going to get straight into this. In the Judiciary Act of 1789, the first Congress provided a detailed organization of a federal judiciary that the Congress had already, that the Constitution had already sketched in its general terms. So that means that they provided if the Constitution gave you a blueprint, basically that blueprint was empty, and now they drew all the instructions inside and how to build this, how to make that. That's exactly what the Judiciary Act is. So basically, it instituted a three-part judiciary, which is the Supreme Court, which was already established, the district courts, and the circuit courts. So district courts had one federal judge that had it over it, and basically they handled really small things, small cases, minor cases, maritime cases, admiralty cases, things of that nature. The Supreme Court, on the other hand, had originally six, one Chief Justice and 5 Supreme Court justices. Now, that number is subject to change throughout history. Right now we have 9. It's a pretty fluctuating number. So, basically, the circuit courts had 2 Supreme Court justices and one local district judge that presided over it, and they used a practice called circuit riding, and each justice was assigned to one of the 3 geographical circuits and traveled to the designated meeting places within the districts of that court or circuit court. So, now you're asking, wow, so everybody just said, yeah, hats off to you, man. This is a really cool idea. Let's just do it. Well, no. They had to debate this bill. The Senate, in order to, even before they debated the bill, the Senate distributed printed copies and solicited the opinions of constituents, particularly among the legal community, which means everybody who's in the legislature and stuff like that. So the debates over ratification of the Constitution made clear that many citizens feared that an independent federal judiciary might threaten state courts and restrict certain civil liberties. So, basically, they had to find a way to respond to that. So, in response to those, the act allowed state courts to exercise concurrent jurisdiction over many federal questions, and it required federal courts to select juries according to the procedures used by the district state courts, and it guaranteed the right to trial in the district where the defendant lived. By establishing this relatively high monetary value for cases in circuit courts. The act protected small debtors and those who could not afford to travel to a distant court. The debate over the Judiciary Act coincided with Congress's consideration of the Bill of Rights, which offered further assurances that the federal courts would respect traditional liberties, such as trial by jury. Well, you know, that's basically the gist of the Judiciary Act. But the Judiciary Act represented really a compromise between those who wanted a federal court to exercise full jurisdiction over the Constitution and those who opposed any lower federal courts or proposed restricting them to the admiralty jurisdiction. The act really acknowledged the legitimacy of state courts and protected individual rights at the same time that it assured the supremacy of the federal judiciary. Extending the jurisdiction of the circuit courts to cases in which the parties were residents of different states greatly enhanced the importance of the federal courts. One of the most controversial provisions of the Act, Section 25, granted the Supreme Court jurisdiction to hear appeals of decisions from the high courts of the states when those decisions involved questions of the constitutionality of state or federal laws or authorities. That and other provisions, such as the requirement for circuit riding, provoked frequent demands for revision of the Act. But the basic outline of multi-tiered federal court structure operating along state courts, it survives today. So basically, it just ties back into what I was saying before. It survived today. It's still alive. It's still breathing. It has a really big team. So just to wrap up real quick, it's already 7 minutes in. I don't like that. So the Judiciary Act of 1789, established a federal judiciary, which initially consisted of a Supreme Court, 6 judges, 3 circuit courts, and 13 district courts, right? It also created the offices of marshal, deputy marshal, and district attorney. And in addition to that, it established the Supreme Court as the mediator of all disputes between state and the federal government concerning conflicting states and federal laws. Now, that's basically what the Judiciary Act of 1789 is, and they don't really start gaining that real power until they establish judicial review. And after judicial review, all the power starts coming through, because then they can actually truly determine the constitutionality of most laws that were passed. So that'll be it for my video today. Make sure you leave a like and comment below. If you don't like my video, I'll accept criticism. I'm not that guy who just doesn't accept criticism. So, subscribe to my channel, please. And I'll see you next time on Darren Knows Everything About AP Government. Thanks, Mr. Fagan.